Since 1999, the shroud of secrecy surrounding Algeria's brutal civil war has begun to lift. A growing body of documentaries, books, and testimonies point to the overwhelming responsibility in this endless tragedy of senior officials of the Algerian army, led by General Mohamed al-Amarin, and the secret services, also known as the Department of Intelligence and Security, the DRS, successor to the Sécurité Militaire, led by Generals Mohamed Medien, known as Tawfiq, and Smail al-Amarin, known as Smain. Two testimonies from former DRS officers deeply shook public opinion. The first came from Colonel Mohamed Samraoui, who, in a lengthy interview with the Arabic channel Al Jazeera on August 5, 2001, declared the following: "The GIAs, or the armed Islamist groups, are the creation of the regime. They killed officers, doctors, journalists, and many others. The general's interest is to implement a policy of terror in order to crush the people's legitimate demands, namely, the demand to share power." Between 1993 and 1994, the GIA was not completely controlled by the services. This changed after the arrival of Jamel Zaytouni at the head of the GIA at the end of 1994. A new phase of the civil war began mid-1996. The generals continued to use the violence of the GIAs and militias to establish their power through terror and to manage their conflicts. This is the period of massacres. Granted, there were completely autonomous radical Islamist groups that committed atrocities, but a large part of the assassinations and massacres attributed to Islamists since 1992, and even more since 1997, are the direct or indirect work of men who systematically reported to the Secret Service. The testimony of Commander Hisham Aboud is equally striking. In his account he states, "How is it that these generals, who claim to have trained at the great French and Russian war academies, have failed in 10 years to eliminate armed bands led by sheet metal workers, chicken sellers, and common criminals? It is no longer a secret. Fundamentalist terrorism is their creation, their tool, and their most reliable ally in maintaining control over the Algerian people. The policy of infiltration and manipulation is the ultimate weapon used by the secret services of General Tawfiq and General Smain. Terrorist groups are created and dissolved according to the needs of the moment." Fundamentalism has never been an enemy for the mafia of generals. On the contrary, they use it to perpetuate their power, perpetrate their crime, and repress any opposition to their plans. Their assassinations are blamed on the GIA, a group that in reality is a product of their own laboratories. Why did France remain indifferent for so long to a civil war unfolding just 2 hours by plane from Paris? After all, the French governments that succeeded one another during the decade-long civil war were in fact perfectly informed by the intelligence services of the true nature of the dirty war, the widespread torture, the death squads, the poverty into which the population has been plunged, and the corruption that is rotting the social fabric and allowing a tiny minority to enrich themselves scandalously. The French secret services have long possessed sophisticated technologies that enable them to intercept communications of the Algerian security forces. Moreover, their historical ties with the Algerian military security have always ensured an excellent level of information on the actions and motivations of the Algerian secret services. And beyond that, the links between the political and economic leaders of the two countries are permanent. It is no exaggeration to say that for the true Algerian leaders, the capital of their country is Paris, where some spend almost more time than in Algiers. But then, why the silence of France, widely considered as the home of human rights? Why, throughout these years, have the French and European authorities preferred to act as if the successive governments resulting since 1992 from coups or rigged elections authentically represented Algerian democracy? The answer to this question comes down to corruption. At the heart of the France-Algeria system lies one thing: money. The Algerian economy is almost entirely reliant on oil and gas exports, which represent 97% of tax exports and 60% of the state's tax revenue. Domestic production of consumer goods is low, so most products must be imported. Since the 1980s, the handful of generals who control power have personally seized 10 to 15% of these flows of oil exports and consumer good imports. The former Minister of Commerce Smail Goumzian soberly summarizes this phenomenon in the following terms. By the President of the Republic's own admission, the country's foreign trade is in the hands of 10 to 15 people. It is estimated that $1.5 to $2 billion are siphoned out of the country each year. In 30 years, some $30 to $40 billion of national wealth have ended up lodged offshore in the numbered accounts of a few virtuous international banks, or invested outside the country in the hotel industry, real estate, or international trade.
Des gens qui ont utilisé leur position dans le pouvoir.
Some people used their position and power to engage in corruption, and didn't even have the decency to invest what they stole in Algeria. They buy hotels in Paris, or businesses in the US and Canada. Their theft doesn't even help build a national economy. Furthermore, Algeria is an important supplier of gas and oil to France and several European Union countries. It is thus vital for these European states to ensure the security of these supplies. The system of corruption is therefore the fundamental driving force behind the dirty war that military decision-makers waged against their compatriots during the 1990s. Its primary function is to break and eradicate all the germs that could lead the people into a revolution, putting an end to their privileges, and permanently drying up the sources of their fortune. The system of corruption, which undoubtedly still operates today, could not function without complicity in France, Algeria's leading commercial partner. As Lucille Provost recalled, it is primarily in relation to France, to French firms, to the intermediaries who work with them, that the Algerian regime organizes the bringing under control of the economy. It's only natural. French companies are already on site. The men already know each other. These are therefore real networks of political and economic influence which were set up with the former metropolis and still exist today. The blood of tens of thousands of Algerians was spilled so that the system of corruption could continue in secrecy. We therefore understand that those who seek to dismantle it risk their lives. The emblematic example is, no less, that of President Mohamed Boudiaf. After the resignation of the Algerian President Chadilan Ben Jedid on January 11, 1992, the government decided, on January 12th, to cancel the second round of elections scheduled for January 16th, following the victory on December 26, 1991, of the Islamic Salvation Front, or the FIS. Following this coup, the generals of the Black Cabinet convinced Boudiaf to take over as head of state. Boudiaf had decided to investigate in depth the corruption circuits of the Black Cabinet. Conditions were created in Algeria where getting rich, indulging in corruption and privilege, has become normal, and the example comes from the top. Boudiaf caused a real stir, if I can put it that way, the moment he started speaking out about the political financial mafia. He had sent 5 trusted officers to Paris in June 1992 to obtain from Prime Minister Pierre Bérégovoy the information held by his services on these circuits and their beneficiaries. When the request was ignored, the 5 officers returned to Algiers and were soon assassinated, allegedly by Islamists. A few days later, the generals of the Black Cabinet organized his assassination on June 29, 1992. Following the assassination of President Mohamed Boudiaf, Dr. Said Saadin, then leader of the RCD party, launched an initiative aimed at bringing together Algerian Democrats of all persuasions around a common project, the Movement for the Republic, the MPR. This movement presented itself as the heir to the democratic legacy carried by Boudiaf and worked to defend Republican values. Each year, it organized commemorations in memory of the late president, while persistently demanding the opening of an investigation to shed full light on the true orchestrators behind the crime. In 1994 in Algiers, during the march which marked the second anniversary of Boudiaf's assassination, Said Saadin narrowly escaped an attempt on his life. Two grenades killed 2 of his bodyguards and injured 70 people. Many suspected the Algerian secret services of having orchestrated the attack. The bombing marked the end of the MPR, silencing the only movement that dared to demand justice and truth about Mohamed Boudiaf's death. Since then, no organization has dared to publicly carry this demand forward.